Hello everyone. We have a bit of a downer today on our theme. So, my apologies over that. But before we get into that and all of the disclaimers I have to give, how is everyone doing? That is good. It is raining here and the weather is pretty bad, so there is a chance my Wi-Fi might go out and we might have to redo this. But yeah, we'll see. Also, is my, before I switch screens and everything, is my audio good? Oh no, that's not good. I'm sorry. I broke my arm so much as a kid, so I feel you. My handwriting is very permanently messed up because of it. But yeah. Okay, the audio sounds good. Okay. Hello. I'm gonna start getting into the disclaimers. Okay, so this is also our new overlay for today because I don't want anyone to come in and not be aware of the trigger warnings. Oh, what is wrong with the chat? Let me just adjust that really quickly. Okay. Okay, but as you can see, today we will be going over my hyperfixation. We will be going over aviation accidents, specifically how the accidents have safety reforms that have made aviation so safe today. Aviation is extremely safe today, and that are truly, that is because there were accidents in the past and people lost their lives, and things like the NTSB exist, and I'm forgetting my words, but basically organizations like the NTSB work towards whenever there's an accident to make sure it never happens again. So because of that, aviation is extremely safe today. When I say aviation, I'm mainly talking about commercial aviation. But yes, we are in aviation safety underwater. But yes, we will be going over that. It is something I consider kind of special about aviation. I feel like in a lot of other things, there isn't really safety reforms when something goes wrong. It's just kind of, oh, something went wrong. Oh well. But we'll be going over how that is avoided. I will be giving a brief description of every accident first, and then I will also be explaining the safety reform. I'm not intending to point blame with this, but I will, due to the nature of explaining the safety reform, I will have to mention if it is a mechanical failure, if it is pilot error, if it is ATC fault. It's not meant to place blame, but it is a factor in the reform. Okay. Going to move on to that. We do have quite a bit of disclaimers for this, naturally. Oh, and I also do want to say, you guys are doing good so far. If I feel like people are being disrespectful, I will turn off the chat for this. Okay. Okay, so first of all, our trigger warnings for today. There will be mentions of, and we will be in depth talking about plane crashes. There will be mentions of suicide. And then there will be mentions of death from those plane crashes, which include, but are not limited to, drowning, hypoxia, and explosions. If any of these may trigger you, or you are about to fly, or anything else where you feel like you should not be watching this, do not watch this. Thank you. Okay, more disclaimers. This stream is meant to be purely educational. There will be no spectacle or jokes on or about the deaths. This is meant to highlight how safety reforms due to accidents have made aviation so safe today. People have sacrificed their lives to make aviation so safe today, and it should not be taken lightly. I also do not speak for any past, current, or future employers of myself. I do not work in or professionally study aviation at this time. I cannot speak for myself in the future. If I get something wrong, please correct me. I will do my best to review the VOD. If I professionally study or go into aviation safety in the future, these are my beliefs from when this is just a special interest. Okay. And then one more disclaimer. This stream is only about accidents, and then I will also be mentioning Germanwings. So there will be no terrorist attack discussions in this. Please refrain from mentioning terrorist attack flights, such as United 175, American 11, American 77, or Air India 182. I am not comfortable listing those reforms against the ones listed, and it's really hard to compare anything like that. I wanted to make this only accidents, but I have stuff I want to say about Germanwings, so Germanwings will be in here. Okay. Onto the tier list itself. Today we will be going over, and I will be snail-splaining, Japan Airlines 123, United 173, ValueJet 592, the Grand Canyon Midair Collision, the Tenerife Airport Disaster, Trans World Airlines 514. I cannot speak today. Don't mind me. Aeromexico 1. Oh God. Okay. Aeromexico 498. Germanwings 9525, Delta 191, Eastern Airlines 212, Helios 522, Air Florida 90, American 191, Swiss Air 111, and United 232. Yeah, it is kind of like a class. Okay. Yes, today I'm teaching everyone about my hyperfixation. Okay. I don't know if I should. I probably should just go in the order I have this in, or should I go in the order that they happened? I feel like the order I have them in will probably confuse me the least. Listen, there are definitely some important flights I missed. But especially with the weather, we can't be here for 5 hours. I don't know how long I'm going to snail-splain all of these. In the order I put them in makes the most sense. Okay. So the first one we have is Japan Airlines 123, which is 123. Yeah, we can go over this Saturday night. This is your summer class. Okay, Japan Airlines 123 is the deadliest single aircraft accident in history. It happened in 1985. A lot of these are a long time ago. I want to make that very clear. But it happened in 1985 on a Boeing 747, and it was flying from Tokyo to Osaka. And when it was flying, oh my god, I'm teaching, so I'm panicking. I'm panicking now that I'm teaching. Oh god. But there. Why can I not remember what that type of the part of the plane is called? The vertical stabilizer. The vertical stabilizer. There's a severe structural failure on the vertical stabilizer that also caused explosive decompression. It happened very shortly after takeoff, about 10 minutes. And the pilots were able to keep it flying for about 30 minutes, but they were only able to keep going in circles, and the plane crashed into Mount Takamagahara, which is trying to think of how it's pretty close to Tokyo. It's not, I think, like 50 miles. I probably should pull some cheat sheet up for these. I'm going to be so honest if I'm going to panic. But the reform due to this was maintenance. The vertical stabilizer went off because of a tail strike incident 7 years prior, and it was never resolved. And that is the controversy of this. This put great reforms in maintenance that are very important today. I'm going to put it in extremely important because there are definitely some of the stuff, other ones we're going to go over, are more important. Oh, these are smaller than that last tier. Okay. Ignore me just resizing everything. Okay. Our next flight is United 173, and this incident happened in 1978. And it... Okay, I will be... some of these crashes I do know more about than others. And I will be honest, 173 I don't know as much about. So... Portland. Okay. Sorry, I was double checking where it happened. So this plane was a DC-861, and essentially what happened is the plane ran out of fuel because they had a landing gear problem, and the crew were too focused on the landing gear problem to realize how low they were on fuel, and it crashed into a suburb of Portland because of that. Because of this crash, crew resource management was made. It was not a thing before. I probably should define that. Crew resource management is basically splitting up jobs, so people don't... it's kind of splitting up jobs. Or you probably can bounce off me a bit on this, but it's some of it is splitting up jobs, giving everyone specific jobs, making sure everyone's voices are heard is a huge part of it that we will be getting into later. But it is splitting up jobs, making sure everyone's voices are heard, and just making sure nothing is missed, essentially. And in this flight, they missed the fuel. I'm going to put this in revolutionary because, as we will go over with some of the other flights on this, crew resource management is extremely important. And, yeah, it's extremely important. Okay. ValueJet 592. Okay. So yeah, it's basically leadership, but also making sure no one's overheard. Um, overheard. No one's not listened to, and we'll get more into it in the Tenerife. Okay, so essentially, ValueJet was improper cargo. This happened in 1996, and it was a DC-9, and it crashed into the Florida Everglades about 10 minutes after it departed from Miami because there was a fire in the cargo hold. The fire was caused by mislabeled oxygen generators that were labeled as being empty canisters and signed off on being empty canisters. And they started a fire. They were also wrapped in lanyards to keep them from going off. And if I am correct on this, the lanyards were cotton, which is very flammable. But the cargo was mislabeled. It was not handled correctly, and it was signed off. Yeah, there was some issue with the PA system as well with this one. But that wasn't the biggest thing about this. Or no, that's the other ValueJet. There's nothing wrong with the PA system in this one. That's a different ValueJet one. Okay. Cargo. The mislabeling is more the thing with this one. So I'm going to put this in extremely important because of the fact they were mislabeled. Okay. Next we have the Grand Canyon mid-air collision. And this happened all the way back in 1956. And it was between a Lockheed L1049A Super Constellation. I had to write this down. It was TWA Flight 2 as well. And it was struck by United Airlines 718, which was a Douglas DC-7 over the Grand Canyon. And the Constellation fell into the canyon, and the DC-10 slammed into a cliff part of the canyon. All people on both aircrafts died, and it is the first commercial aviation accident in history to exceed over 100 fatalities. Now, the big thing about this is there was no regulatory body for maintaining air travel prior to this. So the big thing about the Grand Canyon mid-air collision is because of it, the FAA exists. The FAA did not exist before it, and it only exists due to this accident. So I will be putting it in revolutionary. Okay. Okay, now we have the Tenerife, or depending on where you may live, pronounced Tenerife airport disaster. It is the deadliest aviation accident in history. It is a ground collision. It is not a mid-air collision. And it happened in 1977 on the island of Tenerife in the Canary Islands in Spain. There were two 747s, and they were supposed to land at another Los Rodeos. They're supposed to land in Los Rodeos airport, and there was a terrorist attack, bombing, in one of the terminals. So the airport had to be shut down, and a bunch of flights were rerouted from Los Rodeos to Tenerife, which was and still is, but even more was at the time, an extremely small airport. 747s are giant, and this airport could not really take all of them. So they had to taxi down the runways, and they were not really able to go down taxiways. People were waiting on the taxiways. People were waiting on the runways, not the taxiways. And there was the huge backlog. And then there is the additional. So it was between a KLM flight and a Pan Am flight. And these two, the KLM, recently, there was a recent law stating that Dutch pilots could not fly over a certain time in the air without a break, or they would be arrested. It was not changed from, oh, you get in trouble, use your license, you get a fine. It was you would be arrested. So the KLM pilot was extremely stressed once Los Rodeos finally reopened and was hasty with takeoff. And the KLM plane was not given clearance, but the KLM captain treated it like he was given clearance and took off. Meanwhile, the Pan Am plane was taxiing down the runway, and the KLM plane hit the Pan Am. The KLM was able to get off the air a little bit, but because of the hitting the other plane, they crashed down and exploded. Everyone on the KLM plane died, and a lot of people on the Pan Am died as well. There are also issues with this over radio frequencies. The KLM plane was not able to hear the fact the Pan Am was fully on the runway due to radio frequencies being over each other, which is an issue we still have with radios today. It is handled a lot better now due to a lot of repetition, but they didn't fully hear. The biggest thing with this is crew resource management. The flight engineer on the KLM said something about the fact the Pan Am was still on the runway, but the KLM captain did not listen to him and continued on with takeoff. Because, again, I already put crew resource management, even though this did not create crew resource management, I think it revolutionized it enough that I'm going to put this one also in revolutionary. Okay. Next, we have Transworld Airlines 514. I'm going to give a little bit of a definition for this one as well. So, ground warning proximity system. Basically, if you have ever heard the sound of inside of a cockpit, if they get too close to the ground, where it goes, terrain, terrain, pull up, whoop whoop, terrain, terrain, pull up, whoop whoop, that is the ground warning proximity system. Prior to this, it wasn't a requirement. So there was a storm. It was in the morning. It was not at night. But it was pretty stormy conditions, and the aircraft got off course due to the storm and ended about 30 miles away from its destination, where it was rerouted. So there was a revised destination, but it ended about 30 miles away from that, and it struck a low mountain. This is called controlled flight into terrain as well. This means that the pilots are in control of the aircraft. There is not some loss of control, and yet it still crashes into terrain. So because the ground warning proximity system is also something extremely important and has saved a lot of lives, I will be putting this one in revolutionary. Okay. The next flight, you probably don't know the flight itself, but you probably know a pop culture moment inspired off of it. So, as I assume a few people know, if you've watched it, there is a midair collision in Breaking Bad where the main character, Walter White, is at fault for it. Indirectly at fault for it. This is based off the real life story of Aeromexico 498. I mean, I don't think it's ever been confirmed, but the air traffic controller who was blamed was named Walter White. So, okay. So with Aeromexico 498, it was a McDonnell Douglas DC-9. Oh, also this happened in 1986. And there was a Piper PA 28 Cherokee. It was owned by a family, and the McDonnell Douglas, the DC-9 was clipped in the tail section of the airplane at the end by the Cherokee. And that caused it to crash into a suburb of Los Angeles, and all people on both flights died in the crash, and then an additional 15 people on the ground passed as well. Welcome back. We went over the Grand Canyon Midair Collision, Tenerife, and TWA while you were gone. Prior to this, TCAS was not required on planes, and that was part of why it happened. Basically, TCAS is what we'll say if a plane is too close to each other. Is called the stands for the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, and basically when two planes get too close to each other, it will tell one plane to go up, and it will tell the other plane to go down, and it will make it very clear that it is very urgent for that to happen. But before this flight, it was not a requirement. So, I will also be putting this one in revolutionary because of that. Okay. This last one is not last one, but this next one is going to not be very easy to talk about. You would do me a favor and give me 1 minute. I'm gonna drink water, but also collect my bearings on this. So I want to start and say only 2 of these were a thing happened when I was alive. But I remember hearing about German wings on the news. And I also, one of the first aviation incidents I studied was this. And when studying it, I found the recreation of, but the very accurate recreation of the cockpit voice recorder for this. Germanwings is our only non-accident on this list. I'm going to just get into it. If you have just joined, big trigger warning for this one. This is our suicide trigger warning. So Germanwings happened in 2015. Germanwings 9525. Germanwings was a budget carrier, a subsidiary of Lufthansa, and when it was flying between give me a minute. Okay, I'm good now. It was flying between Barcelona and Dusseldorf. And when the captain had left the cockpit to use the bathroom. And when the captain left the cockpit to use the bathroom, the first officer locked the doors and sent the plane. It wasn't exactly a nosedive, but it was a very quick descent. And the plane crashed and exploded into the French Alps. And everyone on board died. I'm going to give you the huge warning of looking this up because it mentioned suicide, and the captain was banging on the door, screaming to be let in, but he couldn't because of the reinforced doors on the cockpit due to 9/11. While the reinforced doors on the cockpit due to 9/11 have definitely done a lot of good, it also was one of the main causes for this crash. After this crash, a lot of airplane companies loosened their restrictions on pilots getting mental health resources in order to encourage pilots to actually get those resources instead of hiding. Now, if something is really wrong, their license will be taken away. It was also, another reform was making sure that if someone is deemed by their doctor unfit to fly, as the first officer was, due to being suicidal, they will not be flying. However, additionally, there is now a requirement for 2 people to be in the cockpit. So if the captain or the first officer leaves the cockpit, a flight attendant will have to go into the cockpit with them so no one is left alone. However, this was repealed in quite a few places where it is no longer a requirement, and I'm not going to add too much speculation into the preliminary report, but there are questions of the mental health resources effectiveness after Air India 171 last year. So because of it currently being questioned, despite how important mental health resources are for everyone, not just pilots, I do have to put it in important but not as effective as planned, because it is important, but again, it wasn't as effective as it was meant to be. Okay. Next we have, give me 1 second. Okay. Next we have Delta 191. It was a Lockheed L-1 1011. Man, I can. Okay. 1011 TriStar. This was also in 1985. And it was going from Florida to Los Angeles and then had a stop in Texas. And then while they were going into Dallas, and there was a microburst. There was I'm trying to think of how to really define a microburst. It's like it's a certain part of a not always part of a thunderstorm, but it is. I believe it is. God. It's a sudden, highly localized column of sinking air or a downdraft in a thunderstorm. It crashes into the ground and spreads outwards in all directions. There was not efficient technology to detect microbursts at this time, and the plane crashed about 1 mile short of the runway. It also struck a car, killing the occupant of the car, and then it collided with 2 water tanks. There were survivors in this, not many, but there were in the tail end of the airplane. Wind shears are not super common, but detecting them is important, as you can guess. So I'm going to put this in extremely important because it also just improved radar technology. Being able to detect microbursts has improved radar technology in general, not just detecting microbursts. Okay. Before Eastern 212, I'm also going to give another definition. So, sterile cockpit means to only discuss stuff that is important to what is currently happening in the aircraft. It is now required during takeoff and landing. You cannot have other discussions during takeoff or landing over anything that is not about what currently is going on in the aircraft. Okay. Eastern Airlines 212 was in 1974, and then on approach or during landing, the flight crew was talking about unnecessary things that were not related to the flight, and because of that, they were not monitoring their altitude and other instruments, but mainly the altitude. And because of that, the aircraft descended far past where it should have, the safe minimum, and it crashed a few miles before the runway. Sterile cockpit is also something extremely important. I keep saying everything is extremely important. All of these are extremely important, whether or not they were effective or revolutionary. All of them are extremely important. I didn't put any flight on this that is not extremely important. Let me just make that clear. There are other crashes, though, that are... Yes, everything in aviation is important. Everything in aviation safety is important, I mean. But I'm going to put this one in revolutionary because there are more incidents of sterile cockpit not being followed that are not in here. Honestly, I don't know too much about Colgan. I could always do a part 2. I put flights that I know, even if I don't know the most about them, and even if I have to refresh myself on them, I do know about. Okay. Next, we have Helios 522. which happened in 2005 and is the deadliest aviation accident in Greece. So, on Helios 522 is also nicknamed the ghost plane. If you do not know what a ghost plane is, it is when the plane continues flying on autopilot, but all of the occupants are incapacitated. Helios Airways was another budget carrier from Greece and Cyprus. And it had other routes, but they were based in Greece and Cyprus. And the flight was going between Cyprus to Athens. Athens was a stopover to Prague. So it was going from Cyprus to Prague, and then there was a stop in Athens. And it was on a Boeing 737-200. Shortly after takeoff, almost everyone in the plane went unconscious from hypoxia due to the pressurization switch being set to manual instead of automatic. The plane was also in service the day before, which was where it was set. But the flight crew did not realize that the altitude warning horn was the altitude warning horn. They confused it with a takeoff configuration horn, so they were not paying attention until they went unconscious. The flight crew never got to the point of putting the oxygen masks on. They just went unconscious. And so did almost everyone in the flight, except for Andreas Promenol, who was I believe a Cyprus citizen. Give me a second, I'm going to double check that really quickly. Yes, okay. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that really quickly, because of it being Cyprus. But he was a Cyprus citizen and a flight attendant. And he was able to stay conscious because he was able to recognize that hypoxia was happening, and he got one of the oxygen tanks that last longer that the flight crew has. Using that, as well as the oxygen masks that dropped, even though most of them ran out by that time, he was able to get to the flight deck and attempted to fly the plane. He was training to be a pilot for Helios, but he did not have his commercial license yet and did not know how to fly a Boeing 737. Because there was no contact with the plane due to this, the Greek military came out and looked at the plane and saw everyone unconscious except a few of the Hellenic military Air Force officers. I don't know if they were officers, Air Force personnel. Realized that they claimed there was someone in the cockpit attempting to fly the plane. And because of Andreas's father, it's certain it was him, and in history we are pretty certain it was him. But he was not successful. He eventually also went hypoxic, and the plane ran out of fuel. It was also circling Athens for quite a while. the plane ran out of fuel and crashed, and everyone on board died. Because of this, there is a improved altitude warning horns, and there is stronger hypoxia training. Ari, can you confirm with me? I've heard this, but I'm not certain. That people are required to experience hypoxia because of Helios to know what the effects feel like. I believe aviation safety people are also required. I know you're management. Okay. I've heard from someone I know that used to work in an airline that it was required, but I don't know if that's still true. He is retired. Okay, so it isn't like, we don't know if it's necessarily required. It's just kind of like, you can experience it. Okay. I'm going to put this one extremely important, because of the hypoxia reform. I cannot think of any other commercial ghost plane incident that I know of. I know there are quite a few solo ones of private planes where it is like one person in there and they get incapacitated for whatever reason, not necessarily from pressurization. But I'm sure those also have helped a few of those cases and people realizing that they're experiencing hypoxia, and it probably has helped people who are not in aviation understand hypoxia better. Okay. Okay. We have 4 left. Next one we have is Air Florida 90. Oh, I did forget to mention, by the way, Helios and Germanwings both went under and ceased operations as a result of those crashes. They lost too much money. People did not want to fly with them after that because of default, and they were low cost airlines, so they couldn't really afford it. Spirit went under, and Spirit had no accidents. I cannot remember if the FAA grounded ValueJet. We're going to get into groundings, though. Okay. Air Florida 90. Okay. So this is another oldie. This one happened in 1982. It was a Boeing 737-200, and it was flying from what we now know as Reagan National Airport to Fort Lauderdale, and it crashed into the Potomac River, which is also where the Black Hawk mid-air collision from last year occurred. It happened in this one happened in January. So the plane had undergone de-icing, but after undergoing de-icing, they were stuck in the taxiway and the runway for quite a while. And because of that, ice accumulated on the wings. As a result of that, the plane was difficult to fly, and the pilots used reverse thrust. And it's a mix of the de-icing and pilot error. They really should. They had time to abandon the takeoff, but they decided not to. Due to this as well, there is now new de-icing that we use. I believe we used de-icing 1 and 2 back then, I want to say. I don't have this in my sheet. Give me a second. Okay, what's that de-icing? Okay. What type fluid did they use back then? Today we use type 1 fluid, which is a lot more concentrated than it was back then. It was not as concentrated back in the day. I want to say they used 3 or 4 back then. I mixed up which one it was today. Okay, my apologies. So they used only type 1 de-icing fluid back then. Today we now use type 1, and then we also use type 4 after. And they are both more concentrated than they were in this incident. There was an issue with dilution as well. But the pilot error was another thing. I'm going to put this one in. I'm going to put it in revolutionary because the modern de-icing. Colgan was the other de-icing one, wasn't it? Oh, wait, shoot, that's right, isn't it? Or is that? No. There's another flight that I cannot remember the name of, but it was a flight carrying U.S. military soldiers, and due to issues with de-icing, it also crashed. That was before this one, I believe, but I cannot remember the name of it. Okay. Aero Air. 1285R. They were going from Cairo to West Germany to Newfoundland to Kentucky. It was through Cologne. That was why I mixed it up. But oh, this one was shortly after. My apologies. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the ones I have on the list. Next we have American 191, which is the deadliest aviation accident in American history. And it was outside of O'Hare. So if you know about the giant O'Hare crash in 79, right? I'm not going stupid. It's 79, right? Okay. In 1979, May 25th, 1979. Actually, let me confirm that. Yeah, okay. Yep. May 25th, 1979. Okay. This flight was a DC-10. Oh, I forgot to put my little badge. Just said Certified McDonnell Douglas Hater. I meant to give myself a little thing that said Certified McDonnell Douglas Hater. Damn. Okay, but this was a DC-10 that took off from O'Hare, and when it was past decision speed, the left engine came off, and that caused the plane to tilt and crash into a holding facility for something. Oh God, what did I can't remember. It crashed into some building, but all people on board died. So something you might have heard if you're somewhat scared of aviation, I do not know why you are still watching this. But one thing you might have heard about aviation is that a plane can continue to fly on one engine. And you might be wondering, but a DC-10 is a tri-engine plane. 3-engine, tri-engine, same thing. This one stopped flying because you said it lost an engine. And there was another crash recently that lost an engine. And it crashed because of that. What do you mean it can go without one engine? Well, a plane can survive with one engine if the engine goes out. When the engine comes off, the plane cannot survive because the weight distribution goes off. Planes are very fragile when it comes to weight distribution. Cargo has to be very carefully planned. Humans on board have to be very carefully planned and taken accounted for. So the weight distribution went off. I remember with this one, McDonnell Douglas did try to blame the captain as well, claiming he could have come out of it. But reasonably, while it might be in theory possible, going through all of that and being in that seat itself, the NTSB ruled it mechanical fault. This did cause maintenance reforms, and because of this is another thing that contributed to the MD-11 existing. The MD-11 was made for partially this crash and another United 232, which we will go over, to fix the issues with the very infamous DC-10. However, due to the crash that took place in November last year of a MD-11. I do have to put this in important but not effective as planned. That crash was just a repeat of this one. So, I do have to put it there. I kind of want to switch these. I'm going to switch these last two, and I'm going to do United 232 first, and then I'm going to go on to Swiss Air, because while we're going on about DC-10s. Okay. United 232. It is... My mom has a special interest in specifically United 232. And I think my entire hyperfixation on aviation accidents comes from her hyperfixation on this. This flight is also known as the Impossible Landing. If I am correct, no one has been able, unless this more has recently been updated, but again, I could be wrong. No one, last I've heard, no one has been able to recreate this in the simulator and have not everyone die. Okay. So, as I mentioned, with the last flight, a DC-10 is a tri-engine plane, meaning it has one engine on each wing, and then it has another engine on the tail. Oh, this flight also happened in 1989. But it has 3 engines. We will be going on to the one on the tail. The flight was going from Denver to Chicago at this time. While in flight, the tail engine failed, and that caused a complete hydraulic failure. Because of that complete hydraulic failure, there was a loss of all flight controls. They could not turn. They couldn't do a lot of things, but mainly they couldn't turn. How they had to fly the plane was manually using the thrust to, between them, move the plane because the thrust kept going. They also were going up and down a lot, and they couldn't control that. Now, I would also like to mention, first of all, before I get into our lucky star of this, the captain was Al Haynes, and the first officer was Bill Records. And then the flight engineer, Dvorak, I don't remember his first name, my apologies. They were all also heroes. They all did great. If I'm correct, Bill Records is the only one still with us, not due to this incident, just due to time. But, as we'll get into now, very luckily for them, there was a DC-10 instructor on board named Denny Fitch, who had studied Japan 1, 2, 3. I don't know if I mentioned this with JLA 1, 2, 3, but what caused them to lose controls and only be able to turn was they lost all hydraulics as well. My apologies, I don't think I mentioned the complete loss of hydraulics earlier. I think I passed over that on accident, but he studied that a lot and went over it in the flight simulator a lot. He he wasn't able to get. No one was able to get JLA 1, 2, 3 to land. Just making that clear. But while on the flight, he was saying to flight attendant, "I can help if something happens," because he noticed something was wrong. They brought him into the cockpit. He used his expertise to assist. He sat in between the captain and first officer and handled the thrust of both engines as they continued to fly the plane and reroute it, where it rerouted to Sioux City, Iowa. When landing in Sioux City, Iowa, they were not able to make a perfect landing due to everything considered, and the plane cartwheeled. When the plane cartwheeled, it caught on fire, and 112 people died. Meanwhile, I would also like to point out as well, what makes this the impossible landing that is so impressive over this is 184 people survived. They expected everyone to die. Everyone expected everyone to die. It was an impossible landing. I also, all of the people in the flight crew, not flight crew, my apologies, the captain, first officer, flight engineer, and Denny Fitch all survived with injuries, but they all survived. The cockpit separated from the rest of the plane. When it cartwheeled, they were found quite later, but they were found alive. And I do remember hearing something from one of the rescuers of it. When they heard 4 voices in the cockpit, they were extremely confused. Okay. Due to this flight, the MD-11 was made as well, due to this one, to improve issues with the hydraulic system. And then, on top of that, additional studies were done on how to fly a plane without hydraulics. However, I would also like to add, I'm going to put this in extremely important, but I do want to add that the studies into hydraulics were never really added into planes because it is something that so rarely happened that it wasn't properly implemented. There was a DHL flight that was attempted shoot down in Iraq in 2003, and they also completely lost their hydraulics. It was an Airbus 300. Somehow, everyone survived. I haven't studied this flight too much. The DHL one too much. And it was a while ago, but they did land. They were only able to use the thrust as well on this one, but I believe he did study this one and was able to land, and everyone survived. Okay, our last one for today is a flight that happened on my birthday 5 years before I was born. And sometimes there's quite a few coincidences with MD-11s in my life where I kind of think I died in this crash in a past life. I'm not gonna lie. But that's not the point here. So there's another company that went under, and that's kind of because of this flight. It's not completely. They had some other mismanagement issues as well. This one isn't as directly related as German Wings and Helios, but this one was in MD-11, and the flight was going from New York City to Geneva, Switzerland. So, when you fly over the oceans, you don't fly directly over the oceans most of the time. If you've ever been on a flight to, say, Japan or somewhere, you notice that it goes up. You go near the poles. And that's for a few reasons. It's safer. You have more places you can divert. And also, spears are weird. But the flight crashed into the Atlantic Ocean near Nova Scotia, Canada, and everyone died on board. What happened was Swiss Air had recently added an in-flight entertainment system to their MD-11s for the first-class passengers, and I specifically remember it included gambling for some reason. My apologies. The entertainment system was not inputted correctly. I'm sorry, was not wired correctly, and the insulation was not sufficient. Yeah, they had gambling on there, to try to get people to, spend money. I think because they were in like international waters for a good amount of it, they were able to. I don't know. But a fire started, and they did call Mayday, but there wasn't anything they could do. The fire spread too fast. The insulation and the cooling systems for the in-flight entertainment was a huge factor. And the insulation used in planes and cooling systems for entertainment systems were changed after this. Because of how common in-flight entertainment is now, I'm going to put this one into extremely important. It's not as revolutionary as the other ones in revolutionary, but I do think it is extremely important, especially with how common this stuff is. If there is issues with insulation in general as well, where they are flammable, that's something you want fixed, whether or not it relates to in-flight entertainment. Okay, this is the tier list. I didn't put anything in very important, I realize. Yeah, I didn't put anything in there. Okay, maybe I'll do this again, or, go over something else where I can ramble about my hyperfixation, because I have quite a few flights. Yes, everything is extremely. Here's the thing: everything is extremely important or revolutionary, but sometimes they just were not as effective as they should have been. Sometimes additional reform is needed, and who knows? The additional reform is maybe it's coming, There's either the investigation just happened or the investigation is ongoing of the flights that are the reason why these are in there. But who knows? You have to wait and see. Maybe I'm just a little hard on it because it's a DC-10, let's be honest. But I couldn't go over all of my hyperfixation flights. I couldn't go over US Airways 1549. That one isn't revolutionary, but does anyone want to hear me just ramble about it for a bit? Anyone want to hear me talk about the miracle on the Hudson for a bit? Yes, Sully. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna do that because after all of these depressing accidents, I feel like we need something a little more positive. So, this is another more recent thing, but the miracle on the Hudson happened on January 15th, 2009, on an Airbus A320, where the flock of Canadian geese were ingested by both engines, and there was a double engine failure. This also connects to some of the other accidents. The captain, Chesley Sullenberger, not to discredit Jeffrey Skiles, the lovely first officer, and the flight attendants who also really effectively evacuate everyone, and the emergency crews and their emergency services, and just the ferry boat captains and anyone else that helped assist get people out of the Hudson. But the miracle on the Hudson, the only completely the most effective water ditching in history at this time. The captain, Chesley Sullenberger, studied Japan Airlines 123 as well as United 232, and because of that was able to successfully complete a water ditching in the Hudson, where everyone lived. There were a few people that were injured, but everyone survived. This also happened in New York City, which, if you know anything about New York City, is they have a lot of skyscrapers. The chances that if he went somewhere else with a normal human reaction time, that he would have hit a skyscraper is pretty high. It's technically possible that he could have, but it's not reasonable with a human reaction time, and he had an extremely fast reaction time as it is. I also would like to add, the movie, not exactly accurate. The FAA and NTSB were not ever blaming him. The fact that it could have happened is not something that was a factor. It was not, oh, but you could have, why didn't you? They were very aware that it was not reasonable for him to try to go back. Humans have reaction times. He had a very fast reaction time, but having zero reaction time is not something that the FAA or NTSB should expect. Yes, the bird strike was also extremely, this is also the lowest a double engine failure has occurred that everyone lived. Double engine failure checklists assume you are at about 15,000 feet. Shoot, how many feet was he at? He was at more than 1,000. Was he? He was at okay. I said about 3,000 feet. I just double checked myself. My apologies. I know I said this is my hyperfixation crash, but sometimes I forget stuff, okay? But basically a lot less. They could not get through the full checklist. He immediately skipped to, I want to say it was like step 15 or something. As well, I would also like to credit the first officer with this. Jeffrey Skiles had just completed his certification on the Airbus A320, or maybe his recertification. But because of that, he had just gone over double engine failure stuff, so he knew what to do. Now, they did skip the steps, but because of that, he knew what to check when they skipped it, and that was another huge factor. I'm trying to think if there's anything I forgot about. Yes, engines are designed to ingest birds, but not birds as big as Canadian geese. Geese are big. Canadian geese are even bigger. Reform for that one, this is kind of depressing. They euthanize geese they see get too close to LaGuardia now. So that's not as... yeah. But yes, that's your everyone lived accident. There is a lot of like the impossible landing, where there's a lot of miracle landings and stuff, where even if necessarily not everybody survives, it's still amazing that so many people did. Thanks to the captains, first officers, flight engineers, flight attendants. I don't know why I forgot the word for flight attendants. Other civilians, such as in Air Florida. I didn't mention, only 5 people survived Air Florida, but there was a 6th survivor, technically, who did not make it because he kept going in to drag more people out of the water. But there are situations like that where people save other people, even if it isn't their job, and that should be rewarded. Okay. Well, that is it for our tier list today. I hope I was able to educate you and hopefully remind myself on some of the accidents I forgot a bit about. But, if you want to see me do something similar, go over, maybe something with accidents where everyone lives, or just miracle accidents. I can do that as well. Let me know. But that will be it for our planned streams this week. If something happens, I might possibly stream on tomorrow. It's gonna depend. That would be something more unplanned. I don't have anything on my schedule. I never posted my schedule on YouTube, I know that. That'd be something more unplanned, and I'm not certain. But that will depend on the weather, to be honest. Maybe I do a daytime stream. We'll see. But that will be it for today. We'll also see how the one-man prep ends up going. I will see some of you on Saturday. But, yes, let me know if you want something more similar to me ranting about hyperfixation. Could do something like that. I could do, I'm trying to think of other things I could stream. I really suck at drawing, so I'm not exactly sure how I would do this on stream, but I could do something, going over breaking down certain VTuber outfits on how to construct them. Because I know some people hate cosplayers. My Oshi, I'm looking at you. I can look at his outfit and go, that's how you make this. But yeah, if that's something, maybe probably be more of a short form thing I'd do. Let me know. I might have a surprise for Saturday. We'll see. You haven't decided you're coming yet on Saturday. You should. Okay. That'll be it for today. Thank you all. Goodbye. I hope this wasn't too much of a downer, by the way.